There is only one success: to be able to spend your life in your own way. Christopher Morley. Hi, I'm John Rose. And in this video, I'm going to take a closer look at what it's going to take to be successful. And this is an important lesson for all of us to learn, because whenever anybody tells us an answer to this question, just like whenever anyone writes a book, it's always from their limited perspective, or it's mostly always from their limited perspective. Remember the 6 blind men from India? They find the elephant. One grabs the leg and goes, "It's a tree." Another grabs its ear and goes, "No, it's a fan." Another grabs the trunk and says, "No, it's a snake." Another grabs the tusk and says, "No, it's a spear." The other one grabs the tail and says, "Oh, it's a rope." The other one grabs the wall and says, or grabs the side of them and says, "No, it's a wall." This is how we are. We all come from a limited perspective. So when we talk about success, most of us view it from that point of view. So you're going to hear a different version from philosophers, like money often costs too much, Emerson. Or there is no greater blunderer than he who spends most of his life getting his living, Thoreau. Again, it's relative, and wealth itself is relative. For he who has little and wants less is richer than he who has much and wants more, C.C. Colton. So it's relative. We're like the 6 blind men from India. What's important to one person is not important to the other. Now, having said that, we have to remember we live in a sick world where money is now a barometer of success. I was brainwashed into thinking that way as a young man. I was foolishly tricked into thinking that's what was going to make me happy. But I got lucky in life. I was inquisitive. I talked to older people who had been through a lot of things. Learned a valuable lesson from one man who was one of my clients when I was doing accounting work. He said, "John, this is the 3rd time I've gone out there. I'm going to make a bunch of money again. I've done it twice before. Both times I made a bunch of money, and then I went out to, I went out and blew it. Had a lot of fun. But now looking back on all of this as an older guy, if I had it to do all over again, I would have blown off the money. I would have went straight out to the island and lived a simple life." So there's a lot to be said about having simple wants. Again, he who has little and wants less is far more richer than he who has a lot and wants more. So it's all relative to your personality. So Socrates was right. Know thyself. Except he didn't understand there are 3 different personality modes. There's the like to, ought to, and need to. I've gone over that before in this amazing personality test that's based on quantum physics. What really matters is that bottom graph. What makes us feel good? And different people feel different ways about different things, like the 6 blind men from India. Now, I'm going to tell you a little bit about this personality test so you can customize what it's going to take for you to be successful. Because money might not be what floats your boat. Like for me, I could care less about money. I learned how to make a lot of money a long time ago, and I could have made a bunch if that's what I wanted, but I don't care anything about money. I'm a philosopher. I'm a high blue personality, and you'll understand that in a moment. 4 main colors were used to describe 4 main characteristics. Why? Because it's all based on quantum physics, and colors vibrating energy. Reds act, they do things quickly. Yellows talk, they do things friendly. Blue people think, they do things creatively. Red physical energy, blue mental energy. Green people analyze, they do things carefully. And there are about a dozen characteristics that describe each one of those traits. Now we have 3 different modes to work out of. This is based on Freud. Your like to is your ego, your ought to your id, or your super ego, and then your id is your bottom graph. That's your ought to, your need to graph. Like to, ought to, need to. 3 different modes. Like to is the kind of work we want to do. Need to is our at-home behavior. The middle graph is how we want to be managed. So we do different things at different times to make us feel good. The first thing we do is we do things we like. If that doesn't work, then we do things that we think and feel we should do. And then eventually we get around to doing what feels good. So as we get older, we learn to operate out of that 3rd graph more, because that's what really matters. And it's interesting when you want to have a relationship with somebody. When you first meet someone, they both operate out of that ought to graph, and 2 out of 3 people are blue-yellow in that ought to graph. and they think they have something in common. Then once they get to know each other better, they realize, oh, we have different personalities. But until you actually live with the person, you're never going to really understand their at-home behavior, which is what's really important. Now, the man who devised this test, called Personalysis, said that 80% of marriages marry opposites, because opposites attract. So red and blue is a very common attraction. Physical energy wants the mental energy. But the red energy wants to be the boss. Blue people can't stand to be told what to do. Blue people want unstructured time. Again, success is being able to live your life in your own way. Why do you think there's so many homeless people? You think they're really that stupid? They don't want to work? Well, a lot of them they're having problems. A lot of them have mental issues. I agree with that. But a lot of them just want unstructured time. It's not worth the hassle to give up their structured time, unstructured time, to have to get a job. They'd rather be homeless. That's why a lot of homeless people are really profound, because they really are more of a philosopher mentality. And they're out there thinking all day. Now, most of the homeless people I know around me are just a bunch of drunks that can't get anything together. They're not thoughtful people at all. So obviously there's other things that factor into this. But would you consider a homeless person unsuccessful? Oh no, if you have a lot of money, you're successful. Again, that's how I was raised, and it kind of aggravates me a little bit when I think about it. How I thought that if I didn't make a bunch of money, that I would be worthless. But that's how I was brought up, and that was the direction I was going. Little did I know how much life is an illusion, and that the true meaning of success really lies in understanding yourself and knowing what's going to make you happy. So if you take the advice of anyone else out there, they'll say, well, you need to be more conscientious. You need to be a perfectionist. Well, wait a second, that's a green trait. Well, wait a second, don't you want your engineers that built that plane to be a perfectionist? Yeah, you do, because that's the kind of job they are. Engineers are a green type of personality. Architects, lawyers, accountants. I don't have any green in my graph. That's why I didn't stay with accounting. That's why I switched over to be a teacher. I'm a blue, yellow, blue, green. My bottom graph is mostly blue and a little green. And then all three of my graphs are triple blue. So that means I have now 3 secondary traits. Got a great imagination. I can actually conceptualize things that don't even exist. And I have empathy. And this is something not everyone has. It's a personality trait in addition to being an empath. And I'm both in that case. And again, this has to do with the performance equation. Remember, our performance equals willingness times ableness. That willingness factor is a big key to the equation. The way this personality test was used for people to be successful in business is to make sure that if you had a red job, you found, or a red-yellow job, whichever the case might be, you find an employee who has the ability, but then they have the personality that likes to do that type of work. And a big problem that businesses have when they promote people is they have somebody out in the field, let's say doing a red-green job, and then they bring them into the office and have them do some planning, a blue job. They're not qualified for that. So there are 2 big mistakes companies make that this test was used to help people avoid. Making sure you put the right person in the right job. You don't want to put a green person in a yellow job, and you see that all the time. They're not friendly. They shouldn't be dealing with the public. They need to be behind closed doors working on a computer or something. And then the other mistake is they promote people into a position where it doesn't suit their personality. So you have to understand your personality if you really want to be successful in life. And remember, money often costs too much. When you own land, the land owns you. Same thing for a house. You own the house, now the house owns you. There's a lot to be said for a simple life. I learned that lesson very early in life. And it's the most important thing I've done for myself. I am such a simple person. People say, John, put on a shirt. You know how often I buy clothes? I might buy a handful of shorts and a couple t-shirts every other year or something. I'm a simple man. Success to me is helping you guys. Success for me is to have meaning in my life, to have unstructured time to help people and live my life my way. I don't need a bunch of money to prove my worth. I learned that lesson a long time ago. I know how to make the money. I could have made a ton of money if that's what I wanted. Again, there is no greater blunderer than he who consumes the majority of his life getting a living. That's what most of us do. We spend the majority of our day trying to accumulate things we don't even need that are actually going to be detrimental to our well-being. It's an illusion, my friends. It's an illusion. The problem, of course, is we live in a sick world where money does exist. It's hard to live without it. Although John Robbins, who was supposed to inherit the Baskin-Robbins fortune, you may be familiar with this story, and he found out it was the dairy that he was consuming that made him sick, all that ice cream, and he didn't want any part of the family business. He took his wife and children, and I think he moved to an island somewhere, lived on like $600 a year off the land, grew his own food. People say, John, how can I live and be successful up here where I can't even eat the food that I'm supposed to eat? Well, then you got to really consider relocation, don't you? Once you understand how important our food is to this puzzle, we need to really question whether or not we want to stay where we are, or we got to figure out some way to make enough money to be able to afford that expensive food that has to be now shipped into us or flown into us. So happiness, again, when you study different authors, what you're going to find is they're going to come at it from their personality. You come at it, let's say like someone like Anthony Robbins, for example. That's a high blue man there. He realizes you got to look at the big picture. You got to look at the physical, the emotional, the financial, and you also have to consider the time element that's involved here. So when you look at the big picture, when you say, what do I have to master to be successful? And the other one was relationship. I knew there was one more I was forgetting. So there's 5 things Robin said. The other is you have to master the relationship level. So when you look at all the things you have to master, most of us, in fact, if someone was to say, are we better off now than we were 20 years ago? What do most people think of when they hear that question? Financial, money. Are we better off financially? Now, a lot of people, if their health has gone away, they might have a different perspective. But the average person, when they're asked that question, they're going to think, money, money, money. Because money is a barometer of success. And I'm telling you right now, success is not the key to happiness. Happiness is the key to success. Buddha. Now, I'd like to say I said that, but I think I could have figured that one out. I think we all could have figured that one out. Once you realize what life is all about. The sad thing is most of us don't know what life is all about. Life is an illusion on so many levels that most of us can never raise ourselves above the ideas of the time, and we just keep gliding with everyone else. But that can change in an instant. In fact, our whole lives can change in an instant. That's how powerful an idea is. It can totally transform your life, and this is my definition of success, is when I can meet people I've never met before, and I can share knowledge with them, and I know that it can take them in a whole different path. In fact, the man that turned me on to this personality test was the same man who turned me on to raw food. And I remember he told me one time, he said, John, do you know what a runner is? Spiritual runner? I go, no, never heard that phrase before. And then when he started to explain that it's people who come into your life that point you in a whole different direction, I go, oh, so you're a runner to me and I'm a runner to you. And he goes, exactly. And I was a runner to him because he had found this knowledge of raw food when his wife came down with bone cancer. She had breast cancer initially. 8 years later, it comes back as bone cancer. That's very common with cancer. We see it always doing that. And they couldn't operate with the bone cancer, so they had to look for alternatives. And that's when they found raw food. And then they got away from that, so I brought him back into it, and I actually got him into the consulting business, got him back into having, coming out of retirement. Because when I met him, he had just retired working for Dresser Industries. The last 10 years of his career, he spent teaching this personality test to other engineers to make sure that we were successful. So how do you be successful? A big part of it is knowing yourself, but another big part is knowing other people. So if you're a blind man and you think you got a wall in front of you, you need to find out that, wait a second, we've got some ropes and some snakes and some spears and some trees and some fans that we have to consider. And that's not easy. So I highly encourage people to learn about this personality test. It's called Personalysis. It's based on quantum physics. I tried to punch a hole in it and I couldn't. It's a really good test. And all it does is it's a way of describing our choices in life under certain circumstances. Are we doing what we like to do, ought to do, or need to do? Am I going to act, talk, think, or analyze? Interestingly, I'll digress for 2 seconds here. If you have just as much in all four, or in the very bottom, if you're equal in all four of those categories, you're very indecisive because you don't know what to do under pressure. You'll want to act, talk, think, and analyze equally. Whereas other people are going to be more geared toward one way or the other. And again, this goes back to knowing thyself. And that, I believe, is the key to happiness. So once again, the key to happiness and the key to success is to live your life in your own way. And I can guarantee you, my friends, when you finally can figure out how to do that, you're in for a treat.